Hi, welcome to episode 1 of the Worlds Adrift Podcast from Bossa Studios. I am Malford, and I am one of the hosts for this episode. Joining me, I have Julia here.
Hi.
And we have some special guests today as well. We've got Luke.
Hello.
And Gracie.
Hi.
Hi, guys. So we have some great, exciting things to talk about today, don't we?
Oh my god, so many.
Yeah?
Too many.
Yeah, so everyone's got the memo. We all know exactly what we're supposed to say, the script, ready to talk.
Being episode 1, we're well versed in exactly how to do this.
Yes.
I'm sure it'll go swimmingly.
Everything's going to sound great. There'll be no meandering. And
No,
this will be
none of that.
An informative podcast for everyone. Okay,
Not.
good.
So basically, we've decided to set up this podcast so that we can fill you guys in on the details that normally maybe we can't, or there's not enough to write about, or answer some of your questions that have been floating around but never actually addressed on an AMA or as a comment, or, never answered, really. So let's start off with the fact that we've dropped a massive bomb on the community recently, being the announcement of the ineloquently named PvE server. It's not exactly the case, and neither is it the biggest part of the announcement. I think the content that is coming into with the PvE server is probably way more important. So, Luke, well, first of all, actually, Gracie, why do you think we're introducing a PvE server? You've been doing some digging recently.
Oh boy. Okay. So the main reason that we're not going to call it a PvE server anymore. We're going to call it the Explorer server.
Yes.
Are we settled on that name?
Yes, we are.
It is. We are now. Is that essentially a lot of people who play or who have played Worlds Adrift, they end up leaving because it's quite an intense experience. And it's not so much that they don't enjoy the kind of PvP aspect. It's just that there's not really a way to come into the game and learn how it works and learn how to build a ship and learn all the different kind of intricate details of building a ship, like material, weight, all the kind of different Atlas part upgrades, all the different ways that engines interact with ships, all the kind of like nitty-gritty details. They can't learn these things without being blown up. And oh boy, do we have some data on how often people get blown up.
What exactly is the data?
So
I've seen you sharing a heat map around.
So essentially the data that we have indicates that the most dangerous part of the game, the most dangerous area, is Tier 1. And more people die there than anywhere else in the game, and nearly 4 to 5 times as often as the Badlands. So essentially, you're way more likely to die in your first hour of the game than you are in your 100th hour.
So, and what are the causes of deaths in normal circumstances?
So the most sort of prominent causes of death in Tier 1 are being shot by a cannon, being shot by a pistol, and being blown up. So that's if you don't get directly hit by a cannon shell, the explosion finishes you off.
Grim.
Really
well,
fun stuff.
Worlds Adrift is a war zone, but we already knew that. And if you are a seasoned player, well done for surviving it. However, let's be real here. We have all been in the situation where we want to play and we have not encountered a single soul for a while. So we're trying to address that.
It's essentially what we want to happen. The goal of this kind of update is not to make the game completely hand-holdy safe. It's just so that people can actually get hooked on the game, start learning what's so fun about it without dying constantly, without having to lose everything over and over again before they've even really got started. So the way we see it, we've decided on... can I talk about the hybrid stuff?
Yes.
So we've decided to go with what you guys are calling the hybrid server. So tiers 1, 2, and 3 will be PvP disabled. You won't be able to blow other people up. You won't be able to salvage their ship or nick it and stuff.
More aptly called probably friendly fire disabled.
Yeah, that's probably calling it.
Or unfriendly fire.
Yeah,
Yes, unfriendly fire disabled.
No unfriendly fire. You'll still be able to crush yourself to death with ship parts and stuff. But overall, the odds of you leaving the spawn and immediately getting blasted by a little floating death box are much, much lower now. They might just crush you with it instead. But the PvP will be enabled in the Badlands. So the idea is you'll learn the basics of the game in Tier 1, 2, and 3. You'll understand shipbuilding, you'll build your cool ship. But now you'll be able to go to the Badlands and get a kind of taste of PvP if you want to. And we're feeling that people will kind of start to enjoy PvP in an area where it's less of a kind of inescapable like inevitability and more of something they choose to take part in. So they've kind of got a bit more control over when and where it happens.
Cool beans. Also, it's worth mentioning that obviously at the time when we're recording it, we are obviously in the process of developing all this, so things might be subject to change, but this is kind of the ideal scenario, and this is something that all the designers are working on and all the devs are working on. But as I said before, it's probably the lesser of the exciting things. The real excitement comes in with all the content. Ooh.
Content.
Exactly.
Delicious.
So
content.
I know, yeah. I mean,
Tasty.
it's a lot of cases. Yeah, people have thought that this is the only thing we've been working on, when really it's actually a much kind of smaller part of the
Should have
update 27.
We should have led with that announcement, to be honest.
Yeah, so update 27 has a lot of quality of life changes, a lot of new content, a lot of stuff that, is just gonna kind of flesh out that whole experience. I don't know where do we start with that. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think the key, the focus for what we've been doing is basically to try and. There's been a lot of things on our backlog that we haven't been able to.
Yeah,
address,
I
right?
I guess, I mean, so from like a development standpoint, we've shuffled some things around and like reprioritized, and so now as a design team, we've got a little bit more like
Wiggle room.
Yeah. We're able to implement some ideas kind of, off any sort of strict timelines and just kind of get in there and, hey, what do we want to do? What do we think is important? And so, as I said, we shuffle around some resources. And so now, we can really kind of take a look at the content production. This doesn't infect any of the, the ongoing kind of technical issues that we've got our top guys working on. This is really like the designers getting a few resources to go nuts.
Nice.
And really address some of these, sort of potentially long-term systems.
You've been, specifically you, Luke, have been talking about like dyes and more crafting.
So
what have you been doing with that?
So I've just overhauled the resources and added a load more. Mostly in the like adding stuff to creatures and a few taking systems we already had and using them in different ways. So now you can actually gather plant fibers. Right now you can gather them from trees because we don't have any little like bushes that you can harvest from, but that's fine. That'll probably change in the future. I've made them not be annoying like berries and just endlessly stack. They stack pretty high and stuff, and with that you can actually make some cloth. And so now like sails and the helm with the little cloth bit on it, you need to like actually create some of these extra components. You can also use the fibers to create like rice, like basic rice.
Ooh.
And that goes into the new like cooking system, which has all sorts of recipes from different parts of the world now that you can find, like old world recipes like Celine sugar from the Kyoki regions and Birakoy spices from the Saborian regions.
Ooh la
like
la! You can finally be a restaurant simulator you've always dreamed of.
Yeah, and so all of these now go into your cooking recipes set of schematics.
And what's the benefit that you get from a cooked meal over?
So one, they'll last a bit longer. At the moment, they're just a nice steady bit of healing, but they also have additional benefits and buffs and stuff. So you're able to have like one active at a time. They range from being able to move faster, being able to sprint, jump higher, take less impact damage, those sorts of things. And there'll be a couple of tiers of it. There'll be like the basic type of food that will like give you like a small buff, just a little handy one. And then you'll have the more extravagant dishes which require resources from all corners of the world. to create a set of these dishes. And so to coincide with that now, all of the creatures have their loot expanded. They now drop more meat, which I think a lot of people will be happy about.
Manta curry!
Because they were frustrated with the one grizzly bit of meat that they got.
It's a really big steak. Okay.
Yeah. So you now get more meat from creatures, and they'll also drop their hides. So you'll get some chitin from the Thuntamites, and you'll get some leather from the mantas.
And what can you make with it?
So the chitin at the moment is used in some of the food dishes, but in the future we'll probably be using it for armor pieces, but that's not going into this update, let me clarify, but that's just, we're future proofing. We're doing a lot of stuff now that's kind of setting up for features coming in the future. The leather is used to craft clothing. So now there'll be a few more schematics for clothing. So obviously right now it's you hope to find the piece of clothing in the right colours you want.
Right.
Whereas this is going to be, you can find the schematics, and once you've got the schematics, you'll be able to find pigments from all over the world, from salvaging scrap items and from looting like special containers and stuff. And those pigments can then be used to colour the cloth that you use to craft the clothes. So you'll be able to, if you find like a particular piece of clothing you like, and you want all of your crew to have little uniforms all the same colour, you can go out and find those pigments and dye all the cloth and make everything nice. I guess going back to the cooking as well, I know like it was a little bit confusing how you had to be close to the campfire, and sometimes it didn't work, and it's all very messy, and people put a campfire down and know how the hell to cook food. So now we've reworked it to essentially work like the assembly station and in most other survival games, which is you put the campfire down, you go over to it, highlights, you can interact with it, and it brings up all your cooking recipes. And you simply put the ingredients in, you hit cook, and it'll take some time to cook, and then when you interact with it again, you'll receive your cooked food. The advantage of that, of course, is that now we have a little stove schematic that you can find, and that can go on your ship. And so while you're flying between islands and stuff like that, you can start cooking up all of your meals for your next adventure. And maybe have a little sit down on the chairs and the furniture.
Furniture!
Coming in.
Pimp your ride.
Yeah.
What kind of furniture is going in?
So we've got tables and chairs. We've got some shelves.
Shelves.
All very homely stuff. They're initially, you'll have the basic set of furniture.
Yeah.
They're probably quite common. They'll work like how the kind of containers work at the moment. You can make them out of wood or metal, and they'll all like
metal chairs.
we've also got, I think we've got a captain's chair, don't we?
Ooh.
It's like a little bit more extravagant and something you would maybe like put on the highest point of the ship or something.
Okay, Kirk and I were talking about this is a demand. We want a Thuntamite skull throne.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. We'll have the bits of manta that you can stick on there, and
It would be really cool if you could have like mounted heads. So you can have a Thuntamite head and a manta crystal piece.
So
from
folks at
every
home,
region.
get your hopes up about all of these things that they're just telling us about now.
But there's also obviously rarer furniture, more extravagant furniture that's going to be able to be found out there in the world. And then that's how cooking's going to really work. Your ships are going to feel a lot more homely, that's for sure. With all this going in, I've also with the cloths and some rarer creature drops.
Yeah.
You'll be able to have first aid in the game. You can make bandages, and that's basically what that is. It's a small amount of health, but it doesn't do the regen over time like the food does. It's simply after the interaction time, you get a nice little chunk.
Oh, cool.
Of health. So it's there, like you can quickly bandage and get back into it, and then if you want something that's going to like kind of continue to heal you while you maybe in a fight or exploring somewhere and you've got like downtime, you can eat the food. So you've got a couple of options there with how you heal.
Yeah, so the stuff I've been working on is the compass system. So we've talked about this a few times before, but the idea is that you'll be able to find ancient compasses, or in this case, not that ancient. That's a little hint about what's coming. Compasses that will lead towards buried treasure. So these things will function almost a little bit like side quests, where you'll find this special loot, which will function like a quest giver, and then you have to search for the buried treasure. and that treasure will have unique loot in it and unique lore, and it will sort of build up this entirely new faction that we're introducing. So this is a faction that it's a sort of a current faction. So once this gear starts to be introduced, anyone who is playing the game will be able to just put the stuff on, put the clothes on, and start acting like that kind of that faction, and it will continue their role. But the story that we're telling is a story of maybe 5-10 years ago, some sort of great people within this faction. So this is all fun hints, and I'm sure that down the line we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, it's the closest that we can get to a side quest system with the stuff that we have now. So that's going to come in and should be very exciting.
I know, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm sympathizing with some of them characters.
They have alcohol.
Is
that why?
Yes,
Yes,
alcohol.
they have alcohol.
Yes, the most important part of the whole thing for everyone
Yeah.
is that these guys are booze hounds. So you'll be able to find not only booze, but also recipes for booze.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to become a moonshiner if you want. Yeah. And,
If that floats your skyship boat.
Skyboat, yeah.
Yep.
So that's pretty exciting. We've been writing some more lore for it. Gracie's been helping me with some lore.
Yeah, I've been doing a help.
Yeah, doing a help, writing some very good lore. What else have we been working on? Should we? What's Master working on? The die system.
Yeah, I mean, I briefly touched on the ability to we'll be able to pigment your clothes.
Yeah.
We've got some Island Creator updates coming
Nice.
up. That will, I'm sure the people who like to get creative will appreciate some of that. I know we've got our beta testers playing it at the moment, and they're building little tree houses with the wooden assets and stuff like that. They're very much enjoying those, making stuff feel a little bit more lived in.
There's a few things down the line as well. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Moster, with his little notepads that he drifts in front of our eyes. Obviously a big point of contention has been gliders and being not very fun.
They used to be fun, didn't they? Back in the day, when I was a lad.
If people remember the abuse that was performed at the hands of gliders.
You never have to build a ship because you can just fly from island to island.
Yeah, back in the day they were quite exploitable.
You'd build platforms, wouldn't you? And then you would just go wherever you wanted. So we don't want to return to those days, but what will be happening is the glider will receive a much needed enjoyment buff. But with the caveat that it will not be able to be used for that long, and it has a danger of breaking because we're changing how gear works, so it isn't going to be like dropped on death. It's going to work like it did before and work like clothing, like it's attached to your character. The general rule is if it's attached to your character or not on your belt, you won't lose it. So we're returning back to those rule sets, but gear will actually have essentially health or resilience, and if you have a head torch on, after a while that head torch will fail. You can use it for, X amount of time before it breaks and you have to make a new one. The advantage being, it persists after death, and you can kind of build your character's gear and know that, I need to replace it down the line or something. On top of that, we'll have the...
We just wanted people to feel like they could actually use this stuff.
Because a lot of it was, you might have had some on your ship and you would intermittently use it. No one would have a head torch on, but now you can have it on and it will last forever. And obviously, but then using it will deteriorate it.
So
but otherwise,
if you don't use it, but if you use it, it'll
exactly. But it's kind of like on your terms, and you can kind of
you'll lose less of them.
Is there going to be an on-off button for it then?
There already is.
There already is.
Yeah, so that already.
I've never found it.
So the salary works like that. If possible, we have another gear backpack item that we want to get in. I don't know if we have some footage of it, but I don't think we've ever shown it.
No.
We might have shown it to some special visitors. But it's
special announcement only on the first episode of this podcast.
Yeah,
Can
it's definitely easier to explain through video, but it's basically the stasis backpack. It uses Atlas because that's our MacGuffin, but it uses Atlas to basically when you like the glider, if you press spacebar while you're in the air, it essentially removes all outside forces on your character. So if you're swinging upwards and you hold this down, it will continue your momentum trajectory and everything for X amount of time. Also, it doesn't help if you're already falling because it just maintains your falling velocity. It doesn't help. But you can do some cool little tricks and sort of even opens up some combat options because you can technically jump, hold it down, like, and actually just sort of like drift through the air very briefly.
Actually, worth noting that both of these content changes are going into like all the servers before anyone freaks out that they're going to be server exclusive.
Yeah. So I mean, that's another thing I know that people are like, oh, but like, what about
us?
What about the PvP like content and stuff like this? But like all of these updates, we're never going to have a situation where we go, oh no, this isn't going in this server and this isn't going in this server.
All content will be universal, but obviously if we introduce new like PvP weapons, those are not going to be very useful on a PvE server. You'll probably still be able to get them, but like you'll only be able to use them in the Badlands.
Another big one is the knowledge accumulation stuff. So we're fiddling around with those numbers. We're also going to be adding the ability to salvage schematics. And salvaging schematics gets you knowledge. So knowledge is no longer a finite resource. You will be able to break down any schematics you don't like or don't want or aren't as useful to you. And obviously common schematics net you less knowledge than an exotic schematic would, but it does mean you can maybe find 3 or 4, salvage them down, and then maybe try and create your own, roll your own. And on top of that, which is we are working to get it in. There's no guarantees it will, but I know we're currently designing the system. The schematics being salvageable will, so they will give you knowledge, but the other thing I want to get on top of that in for release is the Cipher System, which is if you salvage a procedural schematic, like stats, engines, wings, that sort of stuff. If you salvage it, the highest stat on that schematic will become a cipher of that stat. So it'll be like a power cipher or a spin-up cipher or a fuel efficiency cipher, depending on what the highest stat was. And that little cipher boy can be plugged into any of your learned schematics of that type up to 6 times. You'll see the little circular slots that have been on the UI since we ever had this system, since the beginning of time. Those 6 slots have been there. So you want to make use of those. And what you'll be then able to do is every schematic you learn, you can then start to gather these ciphers and start to tweak and customize the stats yourself a little bit, and maybe start to tune them to more what you want. So essentially every schematic that comes in and it's just not quite got the same stat layout, you could still tweak that and adjust it. So that's
makes rolling for schematics a little more forgiving, because right now it's like...
Yeah. I mean, you roll for one, you get used to one, that's it. Whereas now you roll for one, if it's not that great, then you can salvage it, get some knowledge to like go towards the next one, and also potentially get a useful cipher that you can plug into your more favoured schematic. So that brings us to other loot questions. Not really questions, but you know what I mean. So another thing that it's been on the roadmap for a while, and I know people have wanted it, is the like loot accumulation, which is if a chest goes unlooted over the course of hours and days, it slowly gathers more and more and more. The idea being, of course, is if you come across a particularly hard dungeon or a particularly well-hidden chest that maybe only you know about or something like that, the effort to get to it will be rewarded and not just be, oh, I'm not going to waste my time exploring the full extent of this complex like island because I could just fly to the next one and get the same rewards that are just sat on the surface. So we think this will change up a lot of the how you explore islands and really just be a little bit more engaging and feel like more of an adventure, because if you're deep inside this like crazy complex labyrinth that there's the potential, like tantalizing potential of a stuffed chest of many schematics.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Am I correct in assuming that means that, say, if there's like a server reset after a wipe, that chests towards the end of the game that are going to be sitting there for a really long time are going to be especially rewarding? So there's actually kind of a little bit of a race to get to that loot.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, they obviously like chests. Once they're filled, they're filled. I have expanded like how much they can fit in them, because our other ones are like something like 6 rows, like in height or something. So they've been expanded to allow them to nicely fill up. But yeah, like, you know, so there'll be a point. There is like a cap, but it's like a crazy amount of days that, you know, there is a chance that you'll come across a chest that somehow is just, you know.
In other words, if you spend your 3 hours hitting your head on the same ungrappable wall, and then eventually get to that chest, you won't just find a stick in there. This is great.
Pretty
You
much.
might find 2 sticks.
You might find 5 sticks, and they
Yeah.
will be more useful sticks.
Actually, I know how the loot calculations work. So it generally tends to roll schematics after it starts doing the bonus like loot inside them.
Ooh.
So
when you find a fully
full.
budgeted chest, then it basically
it's
tons
just,
of schematics.
yeah, and you know, we definitely want to make that all feel a little bit better. So I know the artists are working on lots of new icons and stuff. We want to try and get schematic icons actually tell you what they are and how rare they are when you find them. So you've got that initial moment of like, oh my god, this chest is filled with exotic, you know, engine schematics, which I know what the people want. But
Your heart will beat a little bit faster when you see those schematics.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, looting should be a little bit more rewarding and fun to explore these islands.
Yeah, hopefully. So, and then there's the next thing that I've been working on, which I'm very excited
Some
about.
role play.
Some role play stuff. Is essentially we're going to be putting in a musical instrument.
What kind of musical
A
instrument?
guitar.
Oh my god, you were
Ooh.
totally responsible
I
for
know.
this entirely.
So the guitar is it's going to work in quite a unique-ish way for how these things work in your typical video game thing. Because, you know, when you get a typical video game guitar, it's just you press a button and it'll play a note, and then you just sort of play it like a piano. But the guitars are going to work a little bit different to that. They're going to be a little bit of music theory involved in how we're choosing what's played. So
Well, Malford's a musician, you see, so
Yeah.
he knows what notes to give you to make it sound nice.
You can play any pop song now, because basically, because the things in you'll be able to play the keys that are in E major, the chords, the typical chords, and then a few 7th chords and a few 9th chords, as well as some individual
For
notes.
all you music nerds out there, this is an extra special treat for you, and I have a couple of community members in mind.
Yeah, you'll be able to get semi-jazzy with it.
But Malford, what about musical troglodytes like me who wouldn't know what a note was if it beat me to death?
Well, the good news with this system is that because the whole thing is in E major, and I've avoided the dreaded diminished chord that is in E major, you can just mash the keyboard, and anything you press will sound good.
Nice.
Yeah, everything will be in key, so you'll be able to make your own songs just using E major, just like everyone on the pop charts.
You sound cynical about that.
I can imagine it now. In the future, like somebody's gonna set fire to a guitar and just rock it out.
But no, we want to sit around the campfire, bring out the
Play the
guitar,
guitar.
and play Kumbaya or
Yeah.
Wonderwall.
And this is
Wonderwall.
Yeah, I think you might be able to play Wonderwall. I'm not entirely sure if the progression. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
It's the start of a development system, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And it's the very beginning of the system. So, you know,
Yeah.
down the line we want to do some more stuff to do with, you know, more musical keys, fair enough, but also things like ways of syncing different people who are playing together, so that you'll be able to play with your friends. Because at the moment, if you do that, because of network issues, it will be a mess, an absolute state. So, but hopefully, you know, you'll be able to have some fun sitting around the campfire with that one friend who pulls out the guitar and starts playing Wonderwall.
So yeah, that's a brief look at all of the content stuff we've got planned for Update 27, as we're calling it now. I know it sounds like a lot, and I know it sounds like we've never done that much content in any sort of release. But as I said at the start, this is a result of some shifting, like resources and stuff. So actually, you know, everything we have talked about is currently in development. Some of it is close to being done. Other stuff is making good headway. So this isn't pie in the sky. Here's what we want to do. This is
This is stuff we're
literally
actually
in
doing
development
now.
right now,
Mm.
and is, you know, for what we can see is should all be able to go in, or at least 90% of it.
Mm.
So
And you will be able to test it on the PTS server that unfortunately has been delayed last week, but is, from what I'm hearing, ready to go.
On track.
So I
Yeah.
can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go too into detail because it's all quite boring. But we had some small technical issues with the Alliance's update, which meant we had to delay the release of the PTS, because the whole point of the PTS is if there's no build that you guys can play on and actually kind of get your hands on, there's no point in having a PTS, because it's essentially, you know, nothing to test, no reason to have a test server, right? But we finally kind of worked through the majority of the kinks, and it's finally in a state where we can kind of hand it over to you guys and let you guys go crazy and tear it to bits and break everything, which, you know, I'm sure you're all very excited to do.
From prior experiences, you're very good at it too.
So many bad reports.
They're just really good at playing the game.
But kind of moving on from that, speaking of technical issues, we are now going to talk about the kind of problems that we're having on live. So these issues have been around for about a week or two now. A lot of what we're seeing is caused by, well, you guys are calling it lag. It's server latency caused by thousands of game objects that are not being properly deleted. So some of you might remember a few weeks ago the discovery of the kind of what we called the dead zone issue, where you would go somewhere and some trees wouldn't be cut down, some rocks that you mined wouldn't work, ships would just stop reacting to physics and things like that. So we found the cause of those dead zones, but a side effect of the dead zone is that objects that should be deleted, so you might be on an island sometimes and you'll see that kind of lightning storm, and during a lightning storm normally all of the little rock nodes and everything gets cleared up. But what the dead zone issue caused is that these little nodes were not talking to the server anymore. The server didn't realize they still existed, so they just hung around, and soon we had islands which had hundreds of empty metal nodes just sitting there, and obviously that many objects is going to cause problems with the server. So we kind of had to look into why these weren't being deleted, how can we make sure the game deletes them. We came up with a solution that during server maintenance we would manually kind of just delete all of them, delete every single metal node and let them respawn naturally. But now we've discovered that the issue is actually quite a bit more sort of deeper. I wouldn't say serious, but it is definitely a much more complicated issue than we originally expected, which is why it's taking so long to fix. So I know it kind of feels like maybe we're not reaching a solution fast enough, but we do have quite a big issue on our hands here that we're kind of racing to figure out to try and get the game back into a working state for you guys, because I know it's been really difficult trying to play like the last few days.
Yeah. Well, the last couple of weeks, I guess it was a growing issue, and it from the grapevine, it started to affect the helm bug, which was an existing bug that didn't show up ever.
Well, the thing is the helm bug is not actually a bug. So what is happening is when the server lag is really, really, really bad, when you leave your helm, it's supposed to send a message to the server that tells the server you're not in your helm anymore. But obviously if there's a lot of lag, that server can take a really, really, really long time to actually arrive. So you'll leave your helm, your client will show you that you've left your helm, but the server still thinks you're in it. So when you try and go back into your helm, it's like, oh no, you've left it. And there's someone else in there, but you can't go in there because there's someone in the helm.
But there's someone else.
There's
you.
There's someone else that's you.
Ooh.
It's like, you can't use this helm because you're already using this helm.
The servers went mad and created a time vortex. So yeah, we are currently investigating all this, and
We've got all our best people on it.
yes,
Best boys.
and it's probably worth mentioning that the things that we were discussing previously in terms of content,
They're not
affecting each other. I know there are some people who tend to see some artwork and go, "Oh my God, why aren't you fixing the bugs instead?" Those are different departments.
So we have a very good team of people working on the update 27, all of the lovely things that Luke and Malford and ourselves have talked about, but we also have a completely separate team actually working on like the live issues. So they're working in tandem with each other, but they're not, having these people do the PvE stuff is not affecting the bug fixing, and the bug fixing isn't affecting the other thing.
Yes. Yas. Well,
thanks all for everyone for listening to episode 1 of the Worlds Adrift podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can do so on worldsadrift.com, on facebook.com/worldsadrift, on Twitter @worldsadrift, and you can speak to us directly on our own Twitters if you like.
we will link those in the podcast description.
Which nobody checks.
I'm sure they will, if they want to.
Yeah.
Check out my sick memes.
All right, well, I've been Malford. Thanks for listening. Everyone else want to sign off?
Nah.
That's been Gracie.
Cool.
Cheers, guys. I waffled for ages. There you go.
Yeah.
That was Luke, and it is I, Julia. And thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Please give us a review on iTunes, because that's what we need to be successful podcast billionaires like Jab Avenra.
Yeah,
Who's that?
Jab Avenra.
I don't watch podcasts.
like, subscribe, and hit that bell, boys.
All right. I love you all. Bye.
All right, back to work.